an exclusive XM presentation. Robert Klein is about to get unmasked.
Unmasked. Truth in comedy.
Through the inner soul of the comedic mind.
Unmasked. On XM Satellite Radio.
Uncensored conversation with America's most compelling comedic minds.
Unmasked.
Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Baseball player's a little less hardy than football player. Baseball player slides into second base. Oh, raspberry, an infection, out for the year, mercurochrome. You know, football player, the doctor said, you can't go back in there, son. The bone is sticking through the skin. Well, put it back, sucker! New York City flag. We're very proud of it. It has the emblem on it of the white man gypping the Indian. We're very, very proud.
This is Unmasked with Robert Klein, an XM exclusive comedy presentation. Now, from Comics Comedy Club in New York City, here's Ron Bennington.
Let's bring him out, Mr. Robert Klein. Robert Klein. There he is. There he is. Good to see you, sir.
I promised him I wouldn't touch the mic when I sat down.
Yeah, here it is. This is the new box set, and your entire comedy life is right here in this small box. You'll be able to show people this is it.
I'm working on number 9 for next year, but that's not included. There's also a 40-minute interview. I was interviewed by Alan Combs of the team, the vaudeville team of Hannity and Combs. He was so happy to do this gig, to be away from Hannity for 5 minutes, you know.
It's the
kept on looking at the door. I said, I'll warn you if he comes.
You were the very first comic to walk out on HBO.
That is correct. It was a great idea. HBO was a small outfit then in 75, and they had a few dozen employees. It was a Time Warner thing. Before Time, a Time Life thing, before even Warner. And this guy was programming it, and they only had 400,000 subscribers or so in eastern Pennsylvania, Manhattan, and Long Island. He said, wouldn't it be good? You take a kid like Klein, that shows you how long ago it was, and instead of the 8 minutes I would do on The Tonight Show or Letterman, let him do his full thing. Plus, I'm not particularly profane, but I could use a profane word if I wanted to, which I do when it's apt, you know. Anyway, it was the most creative freedom. It was a great idea. And we did it at Haverford College, near your old territory in Pennsylvania. Now they have almost 40 million subscribers, and I think entirely due to me.
Right, sure. Well, had you heard of HBO before they called you?
Vaguely, because the attraction of HBO then was blockbuster movies. Mm-hmm. That's all they showed. But it was unique that you could see a movie on HBO in your house. That's why they called it home box office. Maybe 3 months after it left the theaters, 4 months. Uninterrupted, no commercial interruption. But it was very expensive for them, and they got the idea from original programming, and this was the first one. I think I'm serious, there may have been a polka special, Eastern Pennsylvania, but they had accordion maintenance problems. I think the buttons kept on squeaking.
It's kind of interesting, too, that it isn't not so much about the language, but before then, none of the TV specials ever had the comic coming out and doing an hour. Like, no one ever saw Jack Benny unless you went and paid money to see
That's
Jack
right.
Benny. Yeah.
That's right. And again, you know, I tell you, the creative control is amazing. Unless you're, I had it on my book, The Amorous Busboy of Decatur Avenue. Also, Simon & Schuster. They never asked me to change a word. I went with a line editor who fixed punctuation and stuff. It's unheard of to have an outfit like Home Box Office and say, never ask me to change anything.
All these years.
Never. And when the money's on the line, there's always a grown-up in show business looking over your shoulders. Heaven's Gate was the big pivotal thing for movies. They wasted $40 million from then on. Unless you're Woody Allen or Spielberg, they look over your shoulder. They tell you, take that out, put that in. You know what I mean? So
did you find that happen with all the TV shows that you would do when you did Merv and Carson and all that?
Oh, what do you mean, censorship?
Yeah, censorship and just trying to tighten you up.
Oh, you kidding? I did the Johnny show 82 times, and I think I hosted 12 times or so. Freddie DeCordova was the producer. I had such discussions with him. I wanted my mother said, call this a poo-poo. You know, a penis became a poo-poo or a booba. Well, I don't know. Poo-poo is a bit suggestive. You know, let me tell you this. I did a pilot at Paramount in 1976, very modestly called Klein Time. And it was like a Monty Python. And Madeline Kahn and Peter Boyle were my sidekicks on it. It was sketch comedy. And we discovered Michael Keaton, whose real name was Michael Douglas. He had to change it. And anyway, we couldn't do anything about sex. We were censored, obviously, in 1976, CBS prime time. So we made fun of that fact. We had sex for television, we called it. There's a woman with a T-shirt that said, fully clothed. And she's doing a wow, 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 wow. She rips it off. And there's another T-shirt that says half naked. Wow, 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 wow. And then finally completely naked, another T-shirt. The other one, my favorite one, was we borrowed 20 seconds of film from UCLA biology department of paramecia reproducing. Remember? They don't even shtup. They just, boom, they fall apart. They're asexual. Bing. They form just, not even any foreplay. They just split up. Nice being born with you. Goodbye. So underneath, while you're watching these paramecia split off, you're seeing these paramecia, and I go, and if you're wondering what this all is leading to, I want to make it with you. And then on Make It, they split. So I get a letter from... They called it continuity acceptance at CBS. That's the standards and practices, they called it in the other. It's a censor, right? Woman goes, this is unacceptable, Mr. Klein. We can't have it. The sexual innuendo is obvious. I want to make it with you. The words are suggestive. Where's this woman, living under a rock? I mean, So I thought to myself, no, that's ridiculous.
Well, you were one of the first of the young comics who became steady on TV like that. And kind of the wave of the comedy club wave was right behind you. You kind of pioneered that, right?
Interesting phenomenon. Television killed nightclubs. People stayed home. My nose okay?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
I felt like I had to blow it. The Latin Quarter, the Copacabana, Mr. Kelly's in Chicago, Hungry Eye in San Francisco, put out of business. People didn't go to nightclubs anymore. And ironically, cable television, starting with HBO, created a whole new industry of nightclubs, comedy clubs. Because once the On Location series got going, then you had A&E, Night at the Improv. You had more young people in front of brick walls than you could shake a stick at, if that's your idea of a good time.
They would put up a brick wall in a little club in a mall. I know. It would just be a fake brick wall.
And you know why the original brick wall was at the Improv on 44th Street? Because it was a dump. It was too cheap to put a wall over the brick. It was a slump. It'd be bums on 44th Street, exposing themselves while you're on. And it wasn't classy at all.
But they actually sell these little fake bricks for comedy clubs.
Well, the Hungry Eye had it, too. That was a great club in San Francisco. Enrico Banducci.
Yeah, when you were at the Improv, you started there, I guess, in the 60s. It wasn't straight comedy. It was like a cabaret club.
The Improv was the only club of its kind operating in America then, really. And it wasn't a pure open mic. Bud Friedman, who owned it, the clientele was a lot of actors. So there were a lot of talented people. Like after their Broadway show was over, that's when I first went. I was in a Broadway show, my first one, Apple Tree. I'd take off the makeup, possibly smoke some of the dried leaves of the cannabis sativa plant, and carry a 40-pound tape recorder, a woolen sack, down the block from the Shubert Theater to the Improv. And Danny Aiello was the bouncer. Nobody knew how talented he was. He wasn't, working. He had been a union organizer. Had been a lot of things. And he was the gentlest bouncer, though. For most people, there was no violence, but once in a while there was an unruly thing, and he had a 4-inch into the stomach. Birds would double over. And they were out of the door before you even know it. Anyway, Bette Midler came there. I went in the fall of '66. My first time there. And Alan Alda and the cast from my show came and gave me moral support, and I did well. Bette Midler came maybe 6 months later, a year later. She was in Fiddler on the Roof, and she used to wear her costume, I think, home. It was bizarre outfits. She wore these kerchiefs and things, and she wasn't, the lighting and sound, they were terrible. When she got up, to sing, people would be talking. And after 30 seconds, they start paying attention because she had the goods. On the other hand, Caesar Peters was this incredibly handsome black guy, about 6'6", with a deep voice. College boys were writing songs. And they're watching him, and then 30 seconds later, they start talking because they didn't have it. He was off key and everything. So, you could see who was... that's where I met Richard Pryor, who's the best I ever saw in person. I never saw Lenny or Jonathan Winters in person performing. Saw them in film, and then he wore white little sweaters like anyone for tennis. He was adorable. He used to be on Merv Griffin.
He was kind of like a Bill Cosby act for a while, right?
He was. In other words, without that bite. Yeah. Cuter. Cosby was a man from the start. He was like a man boy. He was so great, and we got to be friends. And because he observed that we got our material similarly, we initially improvised things. And I asked him what college he went to. He couldn't stop laughing for 5 minutes. The College of Pimps. He was brought up in a brothel in Peoria. I mean, and I always resent when they put Martin Lawrence and Eddie Murphy, who I think is a brilliant movie star, in the same paragraph because they're black, profane comics. Mm-hmm. Pryor is in a league by himself. Yeah. The guy did these terrible things to himself and then wrote bits about it. Had a heart attack, and it was one of the most hilarious routines I've ever heard when he burned himself up smoking crack. When Jimmy Brown. Went to him, he said, "Where's your pipe?" It was one of the finest routines and so truthful.
Were you able to see that this was coming when he was more clean cut? Were you able to see that somehow this, because it's phenomenally different, and there's some
phenomenally different and intense. I mean, the guy is hilarious. He should have had a bigger film career. So should Jonathan Winters have. And then I met the most important influence there, the most important, and that was my mentor, Rodney Dangerfield. His exact. We're on XM radio, right? I can curse.
Sure.
Okay. And you won't mind in the audience if I curse? Okay. What the fuck is wrong with you people? Anyway, I killed him. That's the first time I went there. I did 20 minutes. I was already seasoned from my year at Second City with Fred Willard. We got the job together. Now I was going to try it and do it well, and the audience howled. And Alan Alda, Barbara Harris, the stars of my show, were there and everything. This guy comes up to me. I didn't know who he was. I'll tell you, you were fucking brilliant, all right? And I'll tell you something. I'm a tough cocksucker, he said. And now you got to come here every night for 3 years to get it right, he said. He was right.
So right away he just said, I'm going to take you through this.
Well,
you didn't ask for it?
He was very impressed.
Yeah.
See, what I was laying down then was much different. It's like when my kid at the University of Vermont 2 years ago, he took a film course, and he was going to watch Citizen Kane, one of my favorite movies. And I said, you're not going to realize how revolutionary Citizen Kane was with camera shots that go through the window and everything, because everyone has copied it now.
Right.
Well, I'm not saying everyone has copied me, but my style and what I laid down is now frequently seen, observational comedy and all that. It was much different then, and had to be. So he was very impressed with it. Years later, he loved putting me down, Rodney. He was very mean sometimes. But anyway, I was interviewing him on, I was substituting for Cavett. I don't remember what it was. And I said, well, why did you pick me? Help. He said, because you needed help. That's why. He thought I was fishing for a compliment. I didn't think I was. Anyway, I followed him around. We became very good friends. And there was no Yale Drama School for stand-up. I had gone to the Yale Drama School. They don't teach anything about stand-up. Years later, the dean, Bruce Dean, who was not the dean when I was there, offered me a fellowship to come up and work with stand-up and political cabaret humor and all that.
In Yale?
At Yale, yeah. But I was hot. I was young, and I was making a lot of money. I'm not going to go up and, it was $9,000 a year fellowship,
I think what would surprise people, though, they go, they see Rodney's act, and he's just peppering one-liners, and you're doing observational stories. They would think, what would he possibly give you? What would the connection be?
A lot. First of all, at that time, not many comedians wrote their own material, and he did. And not only that, he wrote it brilliantly. His early work is worthy of Art Buchwald or Russell Baker, who wrote in the Times, guys who win Pulitzer Prizes. I'll tell you, our streets are unsafe, our parks are unsafe, our schools are unsafe, but under our arms we have complete protection. That's a great joke.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I worked in some tough places. Vito's, formerly Aldo's, formerly Castelluccio's, formerly Nunzio's. I'll tell you, that Nunzio, that was a tough place, that Nunzio's. When you went to Nunzio's, you went down 2 steps, physically and socially. So
it was material or timing? What was he working most
Well,
with?
first of all, there used to be the same audience every night. A lot of the same people patronize the improv. So I'm an old improviser from I used to come up with new material all the time because I'm looking at the same faces. And he helped me hone bits. Like, you don't need this, turn this out. I used to do the racetrack announcer, Fred Capicella.
Good afternoon, racing fans. This is Fred Capicella. Timothy on the outside, Rickshaw second. Wilhelmina's baby third, Claptrap fourth, and Applebine.
Anyway, so I said, he's such a great guy. He goes home at night. He's really the same kind of guy with his family.
Good evening, Mary Capicella.
Well, here comes Mother with the dinner.
I want the fruit cocktail first, split pea soup second, roast beef third, mashed potatoes fourth, and the coffee on the outside fifth.
We're on a plane. He goes, scratch spinach, He helped me hone jokes, simple things that you can't learn anywhere else. Microphone technique. He largely kept it on the stand. He used his body and his face somewhat, but there was a certain kind of poise and how he directed his attention to all parts of the audience. When you arrive at a gig, you have to find out who's there. How old are they? How many? Are they Jews? Are they blacks? Are they this? Are they that? You got to know who's in the audience, pretty much, sort of. One time we went to Cape Cod. He had a gig in a hotel up there, and he wasn't a superstar yet. By the way, he was born Jacob Cohen in Battle on Long Island, and his father changed the name early to Roy because he was in vaudeville, and so he was Jack Roy. And he was a comedian, and he did fairly well. His wife talked him into quitting. He went into the aluminum siding business, which he was tremendously successful. He was a high school graduate. He had street smarts. He was really smart. And he couldn't stay away. So he decided to come back. He picks a name out of the phone book, Rodney Dangerfield. And he started to hit this no respect thing. And it was brilliant. It was everyman,
Right.
I'll tell you, I got a car, it's so easy to find. It's always on the lift. I got the car with more miles on it vertically than horizontally, Anyway, it was wonderful. And no one knew who I was. And I'm with him up there. We get to Cape Cod, Buzzards Bay, and 35-knot winds are blowing. It's a hurricane, practically, I'll tell you, man, let's take out a sailboat. I said, Rodney, what do you know about sailing? What's there to know? It's a wind. I think he said, what's there to know? It's the fucking wind, And, I noticed no one else is sailing. The boats are locked up. The people are in shelters wearing helmets, So he goes to the boat boys.
I don't know, Rodney. It's 30-knot winds out there. I don't know if I could do this.
He said, that's all right. So he gives him $20.
So I got to give you a quick lesson.
All right. All right.
This is the mainsail, and this is the forecastle, and this is the jib.
Never mind that bullshit. Just give me the keys. Give me the keys to a sailboat. We get into this catamaran. In 9 seconds, we're 1,000 yards from shore. You could have water skied behind this sucker, right? And he's exuberant in the front or the bow, grabbing at a collar that isn't there because he's bare-chested wearing a bathing suit. He's going, I'll tell you, this is too fucking much. I'll tell you, this is too fucking... Like a happy cocker spaniel sticking its head out of the car window on the highway. And then he suddenly, the water is 62 Fahrenheit, it's cold. And I'll tell you, man, I'm going to take a swim. I go, ready! He jumps off the boat. And, he's a speck in a minute. I don't know how to change the forecastle and the mainsail. I'm from the Bronxel, you know what I mean? We're not a sailing people up there. I make a nice I push the rudder all the way to one side, made a nice tight turn of 6 miles. A blue hand, it seemed like an hour later, comes. He was almost bought it. And even drowning. He sounded like Rodney Dangerfield drowning.
It's great. So, Rodney had this mentorship for you. Did you do this for the comics behind you? Is there a lot of young comics that you were able to help out?
You know, a lot of them say, and I'm happy about that I was always nice to them. Woody Allen was not nice to me. He was in my manager's office, never said a kind word about my work. We talked baseball when I saw him.
It's difficult for him to be social, though, right?
Yeah, I guess. Except with his stepdaughter, once in a while.
Well, sure.
He's a genius.
Yeah.
The guy's a genius. But I was good to Robin and Billy Crystal, and I even a little advice to Letterman. You know, I said, you got to look like you're listening, you know, when you ask a question, whatever. I think I remember seeing, they said, you got to see this kid, Freddie Prinze. He's like a virtuoso. He was 18 or 19. 18, 19, I was in college, you know. I never did stand-up till years later. And I could see him. He was really precocious, doing Lenny Bruce kind of stuff and everything. And I told him he was doing these self-deprecating Puerto Rican jokes. He was half Puerto Rican, which I thought were tasteless. And he was thrilled for me to be there, you know. And I told him, man, you don't need that. You know what I mean? That was my own bias. I thought it was crude, and you know. So through the years, it wasn't like any one person. I mean, I hung around with him. I saw him practically every day for 10 or 11 years. Then it became a little overbearing with Rodney because he couldn't take yes for an answer from the human race. I mean, this guy was depressed, and the only thing that made him happy was preparing those Tonight shows, you know, and all that. So I was always kind to the ones that came after, and most of them say that I was. But I didn't have that kind of one-on-one relationship with anybody. Were you showing up at the comedy clubs when the boom started to go on, or you were doing your own theater things? First of all, none of the other clubs like Catch a Rising Star or the other ones had any meaning to me. I was an improv guy, and after 2 or 3 years, I was out working gigs. I didn't really have to try out stuff in those clubs because I was working so much. Everything was tried out on the job, new ideas, you know. But I played clubs in your old area. The Main Point was a terrific place. They still, I don't think, had a liquor license. It was more or less, you know, coffee.
Right, coffee.
They paid you in coffee. I was up for a day and a half. Right?
The entire audience would be outside getting high and then run into the place.
Yeah, right.
Just being announced.
Yeah, there was no liquor license. I played some of the most elegant clubs, like Mr. Kelly's in Chicago and the Hungry Eye in San Francisco, where Lenny Bruce played. But the comedy club thing, that phenomenon came, you know, later, and it pancaked somewhat. There was a kind of Darwinian withering away. There were too many comedy clubs, and a lot of the working comics would tell you too many comedians,
right.
Guys and girls that should be in a living room. You know, because the world is full of great comedians, amateur comedians. Everybody knows funny people at work or in your family. But it's a quantum leap from that to doing it professionally at a time and place that someone else is choosing on demand for the money. Because that requires technique. It requires stuff that's not very funny.
And you never know what you're walking into. I mean, you could be, like you say, working a rough club or a corporate gig where you got to work in a certain manner.
Well, I do a lot of corporate gigs now. They pay a lot of money. I did every college in the existence in those older days. Now maybe I do a parents' weekend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But or a homecoming. I'll tell you, the toughest one I ever had. I did a black tie dinner in Palm Beach. Senator Javits was dying of Lou Gehrig's disease. I think he died 3 weeks later or so. And he preceded me on stage to address the people for a few minutes with a device breathing for him. It was so sad and bizarre, you know.
Yeah.
He could barely speak, and then he leaves, and people are crying, you know. And now, ladies and gentlemen, comedy. There's an old Lenny Bruce bit, you know, an American comedian is bombing in the Palladium in London because her nibs, Miss Georgia Gibbs, preceded him and said, and before I go, can we have a moment of silence for the boys who didn't make it back from Dunkirk? Now, the Dean of American Comedy. It was tough after 9/11. first of all, I called HBO producers. I had a joke in my most recent HBO show at that time about the first World Trade Center thing. I said, it came out of a bit about, what's his name, the schlocky guy, people fight on his show, and they...
Jerry Springer?
Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer, really classy guy. When he was on the city council, he was the mayor of Cincinnati, you know, but just before he was mayor, he was president of city council. He paid a prostitute with a check. It's one of the most astute political moves since the World Trade Center terrorist, Mohammed, whatever his name is, went back for the $50 deposit on the van, remember? Because they told him, I want that $50. No. I said, Jesus, should you take that joke out, you know?
Before you got into stand-up, Yale Drama School, then the Improv, Second City Group, right? Which was before that was, you jumped from there to Saturday Night Live or something. You just went there to actually learn improv, I guess.
Well, after a year of graduate school, I had nothing going for me. Fall of '63, President Kennedy assassinated. It was the most horrible time for me and the country. And I substitute taught for a little while, and I was in a little review in New Haven with my friend Jimmy Burrows, my best friend at Yale, who's like the biggest TV director and created Cheers and all that. Anyway, he had me come and do this show for $35 for the weekend and all the sauerbraten I could eat. It was a German restaurant. And this agent came up and said, Second City is coming to town looking for actors. I think you'd be perfect. And I said, would I? Wow. I go to the William Morris agency conference room. There are 30 actors. One of them was Fred Willard. I'd never met him. He had a partner named Vic Greco, Willard and Greco. They had an act. I was a kid. I'd never worked professionally before except summer stock, you know. So they had us do improvs. Each of the actors suggested improv suggestions, and I made them a bitch because they wanted the job, right? So the guys you're competing against are suggesting, you know. Anyway, Fred and I got the job. And in March of '65, I reported for work. That's when I count my show business career, which is 42 years by my accounting last March. And it was the greatest because, first of all, I had admired them from afar. Mike Nichols and Elaine May were in the very early Compass players before it became Second City. Alan Arkin, Barbara Harris, a lot of great actors. And you did a set show every night, plus you improvised. You know, after each show, they took suggestions. It was the greatest training. And Chicago was a wonderful place to be then. And as soon as I got home, my first Broadway show I auditioned for, but I had stand-up in my blood. You know what I mean? And,
from the Second City, just hearing the
No,
audience
from having seen live comedy in the Borscht Belt, which is now a dead issue. There used to be these little resort hotels in the Catskill Mountains, and also in the Poconos. But there was Italian hotels. It was largely like a Jewish phenomenon. And they had these comedians, live comedians. I never saw live comedy. I loved every comedian on television. Sid Caesar, Lucille Ball, they were all great. But this guy was in the room with you. And they would show up in a Cadillac and get on the stage, and for 40 minutes, everyone's cheeks hurt and stomach hurt. I said, that's for me. And he got into his Cadillac, goes to another place and does it. You know what I mean? It's a high calling. It's therapeutic. There's no proof you can cure cancer or anything else with comedy, but it's a wonderful thing to make people laugh. And I remembered that, plus all the comedians I loved from the television, you know, and I wanted to give it a try. And especially since it took a new turn in my eyes with Lenny Bruce and Jonathan Winters. Bruce was social satire, but each was a one-man show. Noises, voices, moving around the stage, not sitting on a stool or anything like that. You know what I mean? And it was very exciting to me that I could also make a point. So I was very driven to do this. But I also wanted a career in the movies and on Broadway. And all these years I had it because, for two reasons, it was wonderful. It kept me working, and it kept me interested. If I were only a stand-up and never broke it up with a movie, or if I were only a movie actor and had to wait for the next part, that would be unsatisfactory to me, you know.
You mentioned, too, at Second City, you and David Steinberg had this one-upmanship going on.
Yeah, we had a rivalry.
Yeah. He
wiped the floor with me when I got there. He was such an expert, and I was new to it. Until he went to London to do Second City there, and Fred Willard and I grew and matured. So when Steinberg came back, I had plenty of ammo.
You were laying for him, huh?
I wrote about it in the Amorous Busboy book. Yeah. I mean, he's brilliant, but he was not generous. You know who's generous? Johnny Carson was generous. Mm-hmm. You went on his show. It was a quick thing. Johnny, when the new album came out, boom, move over one chair. Mm-hmm. Boom, move over one. I fell off the edge once when they had the Pointer Sisters and the Hudson Brothers on the same show. They ran out of chairs. He was, if you prepared properly and you did a good job, he laughed you up. Sometimes only he and the band knew what the hell I was talking about. You know what I mean?
And he loved comedy.
He loved a lot of comedians. I would say all of them are somewhat competitive.
Sure.
Rodney used to say, I'll tell you, do the Ed Sullivan show. 3 comics on, all hoping the other one does fair. But he laughed you up like crazy. He was great. He may not have been a good person to be married to. Maybe he was a bad drinker, but he was a pretty good drinker when I drank with him. But he was so generous and great at what he did.
Well, before you went on there the first time, it had to be terrifying to walk out on that stage.
Yeah, you want to know something? It was. And it was terrifying almost every time I did it.
Really?
Yeah, because I knew so many people were watching it.
And yet, any set I've ever seen you do, I never saw you ever look nervous. One thing you're known as being maybe making it even look a little too easy.
It's acting.
Yeah.
It was difficult. I did Leno a few weeks ago, and somehow that was easier for me. I was armed with dynamite material because I hadn't done his show in years. I wind up, when I do those, I usually do Letterman. It was terrifying almost every time because I had to meet a very high standard. Rodney used to drill it into my head. America is watching. You got to prepare. He was so undisciplined in his life and so much that he did. Smoking and drinking and drugs, whatever. But when he had that Tonight Show, he'd use a shirt cardboard from the laundry, and he would write his jokes and perfect them and try them out. So when he went, he called it a necklace, 19 jokes. And you go on to Carson, everyone was explosive.
Yeah, sure. Carson loved him, too. I saw Carson just smash his head on the table when Rodney was on, which is so crazy.
He used to love to come to Rodney's club.
Yeah.
And there was an incident once in front of the club where Johnny had been drinking a lot. He lived in New York then at the United Nations Towers. Rodney was at 61st and 1st, the club, and Johnny's apartment building was on 49th Street and 2nd. He had a car and a driver, and he wanted to walk home. And they got into an argument, and Johnny said, "If you don't leave me alone, I'm going to deck you." He said, "What are you, fucking John Wayne?" And he started walking down First Avenue, and the driver, it's one way north, the driver, it was in reverse, just
following him home.
He was so nice. In my last HBO special, before this last one, actually, 6 years ago, he wrote me a note how much he loved it. He was great. Merv Griffin was such a nice man. He didn't know anything about comedy, so he'd march on your punchline. Yeah. You know what I mean? He didn't know when you were finished. Mike Douglas was, a little sanctimonious, Mr. Straight Arrow. One time Yoko Ono was on. I was co-hosting that week or something. And she was doing something I believe she referred to as singing. I wasn't sure. That should have been left to the other member of her family. But anyway, Douglas turns to me and goes, "I'll tell you, she's got the biggest pair of tits I've ever seen on an Oriental chick." Or when Arthur Godfrey cursed. Oh, these are good stories I can tell on that show. I was on the Cavett show. Remember Arthur Godfrey? Anybody here old enough to remember him? He was an icon of American broadcasting, radio and television. No discernible talent except, a good talker. He
was there first, right?
Good talker, played the ukulele. So, but he was offered by the Godfrey. He sold Chesterfields and wound up with lung cancer. But he lived, one lung was removed, and he lived 25 years more like John Wayne. Anyway, he was brought in to rescue Candid Camera. Alan Funt, who invented Candid Camera, was the most universally disliked man I ever knew in show business.
Really?
Everyone detested him. Young writers would work on gags for him, and he'd spit them out. Everybody hated Alan Funt, including his neighbors in Westchester had a house near him. So anyway, we're talking, Arthur Godfrey is there, and he was against the SST, supersonic transport. I'm on the same side as this guy politically for the only time in my life. And he said, well, what about Alan Funt? He goes, well, and he didn't want to be unkind, but he said, yeah, well, the rating, I'm doing a bad Arthur Godfrey impression here. Maybe I'll drop that. The ratings were bad. They brought me in and blah, 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 blah. And Cabot goes, well, we'll be right back. You know, he's going to commercial. And as soon as they got a commercial, Arthur Godfrey goes, Alan Funt is a prick. And it was so incredible to hear that, you know, that old familiar voice, you know, that home boy. The housewives loved him. He had a morning show on the radio, and then Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scout. To hear him say that, you know, it's fantastic. Cabot had a unique show. Cabot was
You enjoyed that show?
Upscale, very much, very much. He had two versions of it, PBS and ABC, and they were both, you know, like a little higher brow than the others. But, you know, none of them cared if you did the other. Leno and Letterman, particularly Leno, they get involved in this, oh, you do his show, don't do his show. I once scolded Leno about that. Do you think Johnny cared if you did Merv Griffin? You know, well, you know, the ratings, you know.
But I think Johnny even used to promote Cabot a little bit. He was almost like he mentored
Cabot
him a little
started as a writer
Yeah.
on the Tonight Show.
So you have a problem if you do Leno first, then he does, or you can't do him second, or how does that work out?
I don't know. I think Leno had the bigger problem with it. Leno is a relentless worker. Relentless. He has 1 million more viewers a night than Letterman. But, you know, Leno is relentless. The other night when I did his show, he was hopping on a little private jet to fly up to San Francisco and do a show. He works 3-4 times a week. He doesn't stop. Remember years ago, his wife Mavis used to travel with him. We had breakfast together in Atlantic City. He was working then, you know, like 300 nights a year. How many nights out of 365? See, I know how many days there are. Ed Sullivan's show was an interesting experience because I watched it as a child, and then I got bored with it, you know. And then when I did it later on, I got new respect for it. It was pure vaudeville. You got a dog act, a ballerina. You got a comedian. You got a singer. You got an opera singer. You got a ballet dancer. You got dogs backstage nipping at your heels. They could do the calculus, these dogs. They could jump through hoops. They could count, but they couldn't not piss on your foot. And Sullivan had no discernible talent. But so it was live and therefore terrifying. I did it 6 times near the end of the run. And the first time I did it, Bob Precht was the producer and his son-in-law. Very nice man. He said to me, look, if you do well, Ed will call you over for an extra bow next to him. Now, he's going to turn you the wrong way. Don't let him. He's going to turn you to the wrong camera. I said, this God, son of a bitch is doing this show 22 years. I'm terrified. And sure enough, you know, he calls me over, wonderful. And he turns me this way, and I go this way. And he turns me this way. Like one of those hockey games, you know. It was remarkable because it was no sweetening, no laughter. And I got all 6 of them. Someone sent me on a DVD, the producer who had been bringing them back as a vintage thing. It's amazing how I was considered to have done really well, but the laughter was meager. You know, I mean, the audience was all looking at him, and they couldn't concentrate on you. It was a very, very difficult show to do, extremely.
Well, the first show that you were booked for, Dean Martin's show. You were just a kid. And that must have been the biggest thing in your life to get that call to go do that show. Well,
my manager, Jack Rollins, it was on his... He was, you know, so famous from Woody Allen, and they heard about this new kid on the East Coast who was me. So they signed me for 3 shows, $2,500, option for 2 more. I go out there, Beverly Hills Hotel. I've never been in California, 67. I was 25 years old. It's California, exciting. Beverly Hills Hotel. There's flowers and a fruit basket. The fruit tasted like potatoes, all of it, you know. But fancy Beverly Hills, and yes, Mr. Klein, this and the Klein. Oh boy, We get a call, come right away, over the hill to Burbank. They're not doing a dress rehearsal for this show because Dean wants to tape 2 of them in a row. He didn't like rehearsing anyway, but this was unusual. So we want to see what the kids got. Bring them, Jack, you know. We walk in. There was a guy named Greg Garrison who recently passed away. We walk into the office.
How you doing, Jack, you cocksucker? What the hell you doing? What the hell? What that crap you're smoking here, too?
Real class. So I do my bit. Rodney has coached me on this bit. It is foolproof. They sent me off to California the night before from the Improv. Good luck, you know. I got one of the waitresses offered to sleep with me. I said, no. My event is tomorrow. No sex. They listened to my routine. There's a secretary and a producer and a director. They wouldn't let me do the show. They paid me off. I told everybody. My family, I was like a death in the family. It was such a kick. Before I'd ever been on television, it looked like my television career was over. I would bump into Greg Garrison years later. I remember once at a urinal. And I was tempted. He said, I know. It was the biggest mistake of my life. You've had such a great, you're doing so great. He said, you know, bastard. They didn't put me on the show. It was humiliating. And, you know, the fact is they sweetened that show. It wouldn't even matter what I did. They could have made the Gettysburg Address into a howling stand-up by putting laughter in. It was terribly unfair and stupid judgment on their part.
It's really funny when you live the life that you have here that you said you had to fight off fear and then the humiliation of something like that. What keeps you going? Because, I mean, that would be enough to make anybody quit. That they told everybody in the family they were doing a national show and they had it pulled out from underneath them.
You know what? Tenacity. People ask me about show business all the time. There was no one in my family in show business. My father was a brilliant comedian, but he sold textiles in the garment center. He was a salesman. Mm-hmm. He never would imagine doing it. Sadly, talent is maybe 50% of the equation. You've got to have tenacity. You've got to want it until the world says otherwise. You know, show business is much more a meritocracy than people give it credit for. Who you know and who you sleep with, that really doesn't matter. If people like you, you get a career. If they don't, you know, it's really more democratic than you might imagine. And if you want it enough, you have to go after it. And when I think about, you know, starting with these professors at Alfred University, where I was a history, political science major, I was in the school plays, and I was very good. And they told my father, we want him to go to Yale. We can get him in, blah, blah, blah. Yale? To be an actor? Did Eddie Cantor go to Yale? You know, it was a courageous thing to pursue it. And it was dark days, you know, but my dark days were brief. I've been working in this business since I was 23 years old, and I never did anything else since, and that's wonderful. There's most of the waiters in L.A. and New York are actors, you know.
Was that your main goal, too, just to keep working? I know you did Broadway and you've done films and TV.
Well, I loved Broadway. I don't want to do it anymore. I turned down a terrific offer, but I don't want to show up 8 times a week anymore.
Yes, sir.
How you doing? Robert? Mr. Bennington.
Hi.
I have a question about Rodney Dangerfield. You said, I know what he sounds like. I know what he looks like, but I've never seen him live. So what does he smell like?
He was a terrible dresser. You know, he had an assortment of red ties, one of which is in the Smithsonian, by the way. Black suits. He was very, very clean, and he had no bad odors about him. He did have a habit, however, of receiving people either in his bedroom, friends, or in his dressing room with his robe half open, exposing a huge stomach and a pair of testicles that also belong in the Smithsonian. It's like the first time I ever met Yogi Berra. I was covering the All-Star game in '77, Yankee Stadium for Sport magazine. There's my idol, Yogi Berra. Unfortunately, Yogi was naked, smoking a Chesterfield, and all I got from that is gravity plays a tremendous part in the human condition. He was very clean of body. He was and didn't like perfumes or aftershaves and stuff like that, but he was very meticulous.
This is a real honor. I saw you about 20 years ago do Since I Fell for You.
Oh, yeah.
With the harp, and it was absolutely one of the most brilliant comedic
It's on
moments
there.
I've ever
I
seen.
did it.
Awesome. I'll do a little plug.
You made me leave my happy home. Yeah, that's a sad song.
Was there ever a time that you considered doing music instead of comedy, or is that just a happenstance that you were able to?
Neil Bogart, the great record genius who died very young. Remember him?
Sure. Casablanca.
Casablanca, but before that, Buddha Records. And he signed me to Casablanca. They did the original cast album of They're Playing Our Song, which I did on Broadway with Lucy Arnaz. And he signed me to a 4 or 5 record deal, including music records. And one of those songs was released as a single. And nothing ever came of it. He died, and years later, Bruce Bird, who headed the company, called me in and said, look, I don't think of you as a singer. I said, it makes a sequel. I don't think of you as a record company. So they paid me off. It hasn't... You know what I'd like to do? Maybe do a compendium of all the songs that have been in my shows and do an all-music record that way. To do a new one and just... I don't know. I love to do music, but I can hide behind being a comedian. You know what I mean? Yeah. They say, oh, boy, he can really sing for a comedian. You know what I mean? It's implied anyway.
But you've had your feet in everything with the acting, singing, and stand-up.
And the book, The Amorous Busboy of Decatur Avenue.
True.
I'm really proud of that, too.
And it's actually written... not like a show business biography, but it's written as an actual...
It ends when I'm 25 years old, but
yeah.
I'm proud of it because people see a comedian writes a book. First of all, did you really write it? You know? I hate ghostwriting without any telling that it's with someone I thoroughly disapprove of. You know, Bill Cosby, a few books like that. It's literature, is what I'm saying. It's not talking into a tape recorder or something. I put some routines in there that I made into literature, but basically it was funny, very funny, and also a little sad. And they want me to write another one, and it's not easy.
Do you ever wish though that you would have just focused on acting because you never really got that one TV series that you're known for, or you played so many different ones, but you never had that Dick Van Dyke Show type thing?
I know, and that was largely my own doing. I disdained sitcoms. I loved Bilko and I loved The Honeymooners, and I didn't care about doing a sitcom. As a matter of fact, I was offered one of the leads in MASH, the Wayne Rogers part, opposite Alan Alda. Wayne only stayed 1 year, became a financial advisor. But I turned it down then. I was hot as a comedian. I loved the movie MASH, but I thought, a series could never be as good. And I didn't think it was as good as the movie. So for a long time, I turned down, Robin Hood and When Days Were Rotten, the Mel Brooks project, to play Danny Thomas's son, a doctor. It's only now, in my later years, that I have accepted 2 sitcoms that went into the toilet promptly. One with Jason Alexander called Bob Patterson, and also slightly interrupted by 9/11. And the other one with Judith Light called The Stones on CBS. We filmed 10 of them, and the checks didn't bounce, but they showed 5 of them, and that's it, I would relocate again. I love being on the East Coast. I never moved to the West Coast. I spent half my life there, but I'm an Easterner, We got a question?
Yeah. Thank you for being so inspiring, especially with music. I do ukulele stand-up, and I was just wondering if you have any advice for a young comedian.
How old are you?
24.
Oh, that's good.
Ukulele stand-up,
Yes, sir.
You use a ukulele?
What's that?
You use a ukulele?
Yeah, I play while I sing jokes, and then I do songs.
Look, if you enjoy it and you're successful at it, if you're less than successful, then keep trying. Get better material. You think the stuff up yourself?
Yeah.
Keep at it. The more you do it, the more you learn and the more confidence you get. There is no substitute for doing it. What Rodney said to me, without the profanity, you got to come every night, was absolutely true. It was there that things were molded, and especially since a lot of the audience was similar, I kept on writing new stuff. Be tenacious and get what you want, and then have people see you. Get to a place where people who employ such creatures as comedians will see you. And there are opportunities. There are all kinds of comedy clubs and open mics. You bring your family, your friends, all that.
Thank you.
Yeah, with ukulele comedy, too, I would work Hawaii. I think that'd be perfect for it. Any more?
You're not from Hawaii, are you?
No, but
Yes, sir.
Yes, Fez Watley, the Ron and Fez show, XM Satellite Radio.
Yes, sir.
What did you think of the warm-up today? Sorry.
Did he do it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did that.
He did the warm-up?
Yeah, he did the warm-up.
Yeah, you got thumbs up there. They're not going to kill you. The gladiator thing?
He's a ukulele act also. Same thing.
When I first did stand-up, I saw the audience as an adversary. Mm-hmm. And I wrote this introduction to a picture book about comedians and compared it to bullfighting. They're very brave. You go in there. I mean, I don't like bullfighting. I saw it in Malaga. Disgusting. But the idea of a person facing this courageously with 20 other guys with picks and things. Anyway, now I don't see it that way. After all these years, there's affection. They know me. I walk on the street. People smile. I walk in an airport in Minneapolis. I keep on saying airport in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I noticed
They lowered the stall. I think he's innocent, to tell you the truth. Because there's a lot of peppy music nowadays. It's
Sure.
what if they were playing In the Mood? You know what I mean? It wasn't his fault. I have no sympathy for that putz because he is the gay community's worst nightmare. This guy lives a hypocritical life. And this widow from Louisiana, who the prostitute said was very neat, showered after each session, was another home values candidate, against any kind of gay union, against any kind of salacious behavior, certainly out of wedlock, except he's a client of them. And the only reason why they're not asking him to leave in Louisiana, because there's a Democrat governor who would appoint a Democrat to take his place. And the other one, they don't care, Mm-hmm. But I'm looking forward to Senate hearings. If he wants to hold on to his job, Craig, I'm prepared to hear, welcome, Senator. I just want to say you've done quite a bit for America in all your years in the Senate, and that cannot be forgotten. You've done quite a lot as a good American. Now, getting back to this, the wide stance that you say you had to keep your pants up. Now, where exactly were your testicles in relation to the stall next to you? Will the gentleman yield? No, I will not yield. Were you reaching for toilet paper, or were you... Oh, I can't wait for that one.
So he said as the years went by, you'd stop feeling like you're a bullfighter and you start feeling like you're what now, coming home?
For the most part. You know something? There's still a little price to pay for every show. I feel very relaxed here. Mm-hmm. But in the ordinary context of doing a show, there's always a little bit of that. I can't define it as stage fright, but it is a kind of nervousness, like I can't relax until this is done. I have an obligation here. Obligations always make me nervous. But you convert that into energy, because when I'm on stage, it's not like I'm sitting in a restaurant with friends and talking to them. I'm performing. And there's an energy that's larger than regular life involved in such an endeavor. So there is something in the pit of the stomach still. And I think as I get older, I love leisure time. I will never quit. I watched old comedians like George Burns, Henny Youngman. I used to see him at the Friars Club occasionally. And then he lost his acuity at the lunch table. He couldn't remember things, and he didn't know who the hell certain people were. But he didn't lose it till later. in his jokes. He was still doing shows. He remembered his jokes. You give him 100, he'll do a show. Give him 500, give him 1,000. And it's interesting to see, because comedy is generally thought to be a young person's game. Certainly comedy writers get put out of commission in California when they're 40. I mean, it's horrible. And you see the guys who are running the business now, they're embryonic. I mean, everybody's so young. So this is something I can do pretty much forever. Give me a microphone and some lights. But I like a lighter schedule. And I turned 65 last year. Can you believe that? Why are they applauding? Who the hell wants to be 65? Before I turned 65, I said to my accountant, wait a minute. Don't I get pensions at 65? He said, yes. They took tons of money out of every movie, out of every television show, out of every Broadway show. So I get a pension now from Actors Equity, not a big one. AFTRA, American Federation of Television Radio, and Screen Actors Guild. Biggies. It's taxable, but it's so nice. I'm redoing the house, and buying an apartment, and it's actually. My old man used to say to me, "Salt it away for a rainy day." Very conservative. He never bought anything in the house because he was afraid to owe money, even to a bank. So he did the smart thing. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars renting a shitty little apartment in the Bronx. But I took his advice. And when I was at Second City, I used to take a lot of my salary every week and put it in the Aetna State Bank. When I came back to New York, I had $1,100 in a savings account. I just saw that bank book. And then in 1968, when Rodney opened the club, Dangerfields, I lent him, I had $11,000 to my name, and I lent him $5,000. He borrowed from aunts and uncles in the Franklin National Bank. He kept the mob at arm's length. I remember once taking a leak next to a William Morris agent at Rodney's club. He goes, it's all mob, They used to love him. I said, Rodney, you need anything at all, it's all right, it's all right. And he kept him. It was all clean. He made back the money in a year or two. It was amazing how successful it was. But anyway, having, security and having run it right, I didn't spend all the money. I never had money as a child. I didn't know anything about money. So I had good people that I trusted. So, all in all, I chose the right thing for myself. I had gone to college to be a doctor. A few things got in my way. Calculus, physics, biology, botany, organic chemistry, reading, spelling, comprehension, behavior, aptitude, attitude, attendance, and talent. So I went in for history, political science, the proper preparation for comedy. Wrote a paper about George Washington, which changed my life. George Washington is a personal hero of mine, totally underrated in American history. Father of our country in every way, risked his ass, would have been hung by the British. He was not the brilliant man that Jefferson or Hamilton was. He didn't buff his slaves either. And in fact, he freed them upon his death with a stipend for each. But he trained himself to be the proper administrator. He was the essential cog in the revolutionary machine. And he stepped down from power at its pinnacle, which no prince had ever done in the history of the world. That's it, 2 terms. And he's the father of our country in every way. And we purport to be a patriotic people. And I know that George Washington would be proud to know that we celebrate his birthday every year with a mattress sale. And tawdry used car dealers. I'm Bill Duncan from Bill Duncan Dodge. And I got a George Washington birthday sale and mattress sale.
Mr. Robert Klein, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.
Unmasked on XM. Truth in comedy.
Unmasked. Swimming through the inner soul of the comedic mind.
This XM exclusive comedy presentation was recorded at Comics Comedy Club in New York City.
With thanks to Coulter International Films, The Conversation Company Limited, Jay Goldstein PR, Brina Grossman and Matt Kelly at Central Talent Booking, plus Jamie Karp, Megan Boja, and Pam Schloss. Unmasked with Robert Klein was hosted by Ron Bennington, recorded by Jeff Rothman, assisted by Zach Berkman, with production assistance from Rob McCumber. Editing by William E. Black. Post-production by Aaron Lee. Executive producer, Kenny Curtis.
Unmasked is produced exclusively by XM Satellite Radio.